you hear me now? Good. Okay, so the topic, as you would have seen on the agenda, idea to design, to prototype, to manufacturing. My colleague, I was not able to join yesterday and the day before. My colleague who's here told me that some of the discussions were quite technical, some of them quite scientific, so I believe we have a lot of scientists and technical people here. My talk this morning is really more on the business side. It's nice to have machines, it's nice to have technical prowess, to be able to develop things. But from a business perspective, the point is really how do we get these things to market? And what we've literally identified from our business side and in our business model is these being the three major hurdles for people or companies developing products. So the first major hurdle getting to design, and I heard there were many speeches about this yesterday and the day before. Same with prototyping. And with each of these hurdles, we see people, especially startup companies, we see them getting stuck. So getting stuck from idea to design, and then getting stuck from design to prototyping. And every time this is this major hurdle. And the last major hurdle, not from a business perspective by the way, but from a product perspective, is the hurdle of actually getting the thing produced in small quantities. In other words, to get to that first 100 units or the first 1,000 units. And this is really where we're specializing in the country. I'll speak more about that in a moment. So this is really our concept. I mean, you'll see this for those of you who've been walking around exhibitions and so on. You'll recognize the slide. This is really, we've tried to compact the complexity of what it is to bring a product to market into these three major steps. Now, if you let our CEO loose on this, he already has this process into 22 steps, and I think he's going towards 30. But we've tried to compound it for the industry to understand, or for a potential startup entrepreneur to understand what does it need, to finally get the product to market. And then, by the way, when they have product, I always say to entrepreneurs, I've done a few startup companies, get to that in a moment, you're not even halfway. So, if we speak technical and developing these products and being able to make it, that still does not make a business. Then comes the real hard work, which is actually to develop a business. But the point is, in any case, so we focus a lot on products, and I'll get to the point where I'm saying where the technology is available. If technology is not available, we will then go and develop the technology. We don't do R&D, we don't do scientific research, we rather tap into scientific papers or scientific notions or patents or something like that. I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but the only thing I really want to show is this is really what the talk is about today. So I'm literally going to zoom into that, and you'll see this back. This is what I call step 1, step 2, and step 3. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming through in this process, and they come at various stages. The saddest one for me typically are people coming in at this level. They have spent 15 years of their life, they have second and third mortgages on their homes, they have left their spouse have left them, they're estranged from their families. So these are the saddest entrepreneurs that we come across. Now, there are ways of overcoming that kind of 15-year development. Not saying that there's not space for them, but there are other ways, and we believe to be smarter ways. Then obviously more people that have managed to get to prototype, and obviously the most people are walking around with this idea, this notion of walking around with ideas, but not really getting it down and getting it down on paper, and sharing it with people. The point is, it's nice to have an idea, but until you develop this thing, it's just that, it's an idea or a dream. So a little bit about us as a company. So we really have two pillars, and I'm speaking about the bottom pillar this morning, which is this notion of idea to prototype, to design, to manufacturing. But we do cover other perspective also, which is perhaps not so relevant, but might be of interest to some of you. So we serve universities of technology, like this one, like VUT. The students following this engineering diploma course, or engineering technology, as some of the universities are calling it, basically have to follow a part theory. And then they have this part what they call work integrated learning. So in South Africa, there are quite a number of these universities. These are the 4 that we are serving at the moment. In other words, when they've completed their theory, they come to us and we take them through the work integrated learning process. And then obviously the university, that's our shareholder. So this is the commercial company, Resolution Circle, but that's the university that owns us. So we obviously do it for our own parent company also. Specifically in these disciplines, so we focus on the disciplines electrical, electronic, and mechanical. That's what we do. So we don't do civil, we don't do industrial, we don't do anything else. These are the modules that we take them through. Now, just to put that in perspective, we don't care whether the person has electrical, electronics, or mechanical background. We push all of them through all of these modules. which means an electric and an electronic guy would have had exposure to mechanical also. The mechanical guy would have had exposure to electronics and electrical, and so it goes around. You might find that funny. You know, why would a guy who has done electrical, electronics, and mechanical do carpentry? Well, interesting thought. You know, we are speaking about additive manufacturing. If you think about prototyping, this is a very useful skill to learn. Because sometimes in prototyping, if you want to do rapid prototyping, the quickest way is actually just taking composite materials and putting the thing together, and there you have a mock-up. You can show people, you know, think about ATM terminal or something where electronics goes into. It's a very rapid way of getting what we would call a mock-up. Okay, so this is really where we're going to be speaking about today. So this notion, as mentioned already, specifically here we add chemical. We have realized with some products, just electrical, electronic, and mechanical is not enough. We can't develop some products without the chemical part, so we've added chemical. And the reason for that is we want to play in this space. So we are playing the biotech space, clean tech, very important for us, and then high tech. And what we mean by high tech is the T of IoT. We used to be in the digital space, meaning doing app development, software, all of that. We decided to step out. This year, actually, we stepped out of that. So what we mean by Internet of Things, we mean the T of the IoT. And we've discussed with a number of software companies where we said, let's divide the line. We let the software company do the software, we will do the rest. We will do the electronic device that does the probing. From probe, you know, data back into a backend system, and backend system push back into an app. So we got out of that because we said this is really where we want to play. And that's become interesting. A little bit about me, you've had my intro, I'm not going to go too much into that. Just a point maybe that I've been involved in quite a number of startup companies. There's a little electronic device. Quite new, quite breakthrough, haptic devices as it's called. Right. You would ask, why am I talking about cars? We see in the news, autonomous cars, we see electric vehicles, we see all sorts of things. It's not about that. Really what we're trying to illustrate here is where we are going towards is providing what we are doing, product and technology development as a service. So corporate companies typically operate here. You know, they like a person owning a car, so it's a full-on vertical, so they do everything themselves. In the last 20 or so years, we've seen a lot of even corporates moving into the space of outsourcing some of the things. So I'm just using the analogy of the car, of saying this is how businesses have moved into this notion of, okay, let's outsource some of it. So let's lease some of my equipment rather than owning the equipment, right? So there was this notion 20, 25 years ago of becoming asset-light companies. And that was the notion where they were moving to. And we see them moving more and more into the portion where they're actually, in fact, just literally renting everything. You could be a full virtual company. Think of a little web shop that's running there on that side. Fully virtually. They don't need to carry stock, they don't need manufacturing, it's all outsourced. The only thing they need is a web shop, right? So web shop, take order in, somewhere else things happen, and then... So we as a company are playing in this space. So what we are trying to achieve is changing what, if I use the analogy as a car, is what we're saying product or technology development as a service. So for a startup company, that basically means we're operating about there. A startup company needs all these services because they don't have the skills. You must now understand, people walking around with ideas are not necessarily engineers or technicians or scientists. In fact, many inventions that you see come from another industry. You know, it could be an accountant or a lawyer or a cleaner could come up with brilliant ideas, which means they don't have the technical prowess or the technical skill or the engineering skill in this, and that basically they have no choice but outsourcing that. We are slowly but surely, but this will take some time. It took us about 2 to 3 years to get to this level. It will probably take us another 2 to 3 years to get to this level where we can really take the full chain. So we will be what you would call a comprehensive incubator, where we can really take a guy's idea all the way, launching his product into business. We're not there yet. It's something we want to move to. I like this Top Gear analogy where they always speak about this and they say, well, the old Top Gear, and they say, until now. So this is basically where we've been operating until now, and this is an evolving. This is very important for us. I think especially with the technical people, anyone working in technology will recognize the Gartner hype cycle. I wouldn't say we don't follow this thing reasonably. I don't want to say closely because we also don't necessarily agree with the cycle. We don't agree with some of the technologies. Some we believe are further along the line, some are not. You know, some of the things that Gartner is suggesting is still a year in the innovation trigger and meaning about 5 years away from becoming commercial. Some of the things we believe are further than what they are suggesting here. Where others, they're suggesting augmented reality is here still in the trough of disillusionment. We believe that's a little bit further along the line. So the yellow arrows for those of you who do know the Gartner hype cycle, is really some of the key areas where we are focusing on. And as you can see there, if you can read that at the back, IoT, very important for us. Smart robots is coming. We're not really actively in the space, and we will not necessarily go and reinvent the wheel. You know, we don't believe in reinventing the wheel. If there's something available and if there's technology available, we'll take it. Connected home is becoming quite interesting. We're doing some projects in this space. Nanotube electronics becoming very interesting, and this is now where all of a sudden electrical, mechanical is not good enough. This is where we need the chemical side, because nano goes beyond just electronics, as we, you know, if looking at the audience, if you're about my age, and when we studied electronics, you know, nano was not there, so it's coming. And then some of these other things we're not really active in, and we're not really interested to go there in any case. Technology readiness levels. I know that formal programs, I have heard there was some American contingent here. This is the NASA's definition of technology readiness level. In South Africa, formal organizations like DST, DTI, IDC, all the formal, let's call it governmental organizations, also follow the technology readiness level, CSIR, those kind of institutions. We don't necessarily believe in it, and we don't necessarily agree with it, but we recognize it. So we say, okay, fine. If you're in a formal 15-year program, we guess this is probably important. We are not in a 15-year program, and therefore we believe this thing is too slow for us. What we are saying, though, is we can't play down here, and this is what I mentioned already. We can't do R&D. That's not what we want to do. There are reasons why there are universities, research institutions in our country, you know, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. So what we're really saying here is we only work from level 5 up. Now, ideally, when we take a new project from a client, ideally, we try and see if we can't find components at level 9. So in other words, we would prefer to do the systems engineering, so we'd rather start at 9, and really, if there's nothing available at level 9, then we'll start shopping and go down this. So every time, you know, we miss something, we'll go a level deeper, but we'll never go below 5. Simply because that's not our space, and we make a commitment to our client to say we'll get from idea to product in 3 years. Now, I know one of the gentlemen in the audience is in an industry where typically it takes about 15 years to develop a new product, right? I heard the claim that they say they're doing it in 7, which is great, it's about half. We're not in that space. We don't do products that goes beyond 3 years. It's simply not where we play. And because of that, we can't play deeper than this level. So we would rather go and search and see what's available. We do look at this, so we mine that from time to time, meaning we speak to technology transfer officers, we have a look at what they have available, and see if we can commercialize that and bring it through these levels. We find there being a gap there also. Sometimes it's quite a gap coming out of the science world into the technology world, but again, you know, that's a worldwide phenomenon, so we're not going to try and crack that now. Right, mentioning that we'll do the systems engineering between these disciplines, and then as said, 1 to 4 is really we leave up to the science and technology centers. That's really not for us to do. So, that very first picture that I showed you, that notion of idea to prototype, you see back here, so or idea to design, what I call 1, then design to prototype 2, and then prototype to small-scale manufacturing 3. You see me highlighting here tooling in red, and I believe looking at the agenda, there were quite a number of papers about this notion of how to get from step 2 to step 3, which we believe is quite a challenge, and especially for startup companies. If it's a corporate company, they see this path as an investment. You know, they need to spend money to get there. I happen to be out of the electronics industry. Intel, for example, when they design a new processor, they know they need to spend about $1 billion on development, but they know they're going to earn back about $7 billion. I've had the analogy of another product that was developed, you know, where the investment was so much over time, and that led to other products of, you know, multiples of that. And corporate companies understand this, but you must understand for a startup company, they only have this one product. So it's all risk, it's 100% risk to develop one product that might be successful in the market. So what we did, and this is what I'm mentioning, you'll count 11 steps there. Our CEO is already on 22 steps, you know, where he's put inserted steps there, but I explained to him, I really can't sell this to the market. It's very difficult for me to explain to non-technical people why there should be 22 or 32 or whatever amount of steps. So we've tried, and this is why we came back to the step 1, 2, and 3, and I'll get back to that in a moment. So this process is something we're developing, because what we're saying is, so someone starts with the idea, right? One of the things we've noticed in terms of these hurdles coming into design is often the inventor or the entrepreneur doesn't actually know exactly what they want. They have a vague idea of what it is they might want. So we need to get that vague idea into something that for us looks like something we recognize. I always like to use the analogy of a building. We have the architect doing the design. So, it's the same. Some of you might have built houses and you might have approached an architect. If you approach an architect, some people have very clear ideas about what they want. And then it's relatively for the architect to sketch it out to say, is this what you mean? And the client says yes. And then, continues the product into building and so on. But often, the person wanting the house just says, well, it should look like that. And the architect says, but what do you mean? So we've put that key step in there, is this notion of scoping. And sometimes this is, I'm afraid of using the word R&D because we don't do R&D. But we do what I would call desk research, just to understand, is this what the client is expecting or what they have in their mind? Linking back to the technology readiness levels, is this possible? Is it technically feasible? So, does the science support it? If physics doesn't support it, we're out. We say, sorry, we can't help you. And the point is, we're trying to say to potential clients, or clients that go along this path, is rather stop here. This is an early stage gate. Here we are still speaking pennies, so this notion of not being penny wise and pound foolish. So rather spend some pennies here and get this clear. Is this possible, yes or no? And if this answer is yes, then we go through to design. And this is where we go through the normal engineering discipline of going through the designs and getting client sign-off, and then based on the design, we'll take the steps through to 2. Obvious question always here, is there a possibility for patenting? Again, like with technology readiness levels, we're not necessarily too keen on patenting. For us, the big issue with patent is it only lasts 20 years. So imagine Coca-Cola had patented their formula. They would have been out of business 80 years ago. So we're very careful of this, but where it makes sense, and if the technology is patentable, we will try. On the client's behalf, we will try and see, can we patent this thing? And whether it's yes or no, it doesn't matter. If the product is still interesting, and even if it's not patentable, we'll continue. A new concept that we're bringing in now, which we have not done yet, and by digital prototype, I don't mean CAD. CAD is for engineers and technicians. What I mean by that is taking it to graphics people where we do a full digital simulation, rendering where this thing looks like real. I recently met a product designer, probably the top product designer in the country, world class. These guys work on projects where just from step 1 and 2, they spend about $1 million to get to that point. He developed a new aeroplane, or designed, not developed. He designed a new aeroplane concept, which, based on this, he basically sold the plane. Just on the rendering of having rendered this thing and it showing like an animation like you would in a real-time game, showing how this thing is going to look, he managed to sell that design. So he did not even go into physical prototyping, because now in this particular case, he's on this 10, 15 year kind of path to get to finally to step number 3 or the last step. So this is something we're starting to develop into, and one thing we want to come back to, and we've not been operating in this bottom space, because we are so technology driven and product driven, we've always just focused on this step. What we've realized to some of our corporate clients is there's a big need for doing this step. It's first saying, before you go into developing a prototype and spending a lot of money to get there, why not just do a sanity check. Would someone buy this? And it's more than just asking the entrepreneur. A lot of business incubators force the entrepreneur to go out there to ask 3 people, will they buy this? For us, the risk with that is, okay, so perhaps they asked the wrong 3 persons. If they had asked the right persons and was the sample size big enough, etc., is that answer relevant? So we prefer to rather say, let's use experts, people who know about this. And by the way, they're definitely not technical people. So let's ask these specialists to go out and see is there a market. Now, there are whole philosophies about this. If you speak to someone from Apple, they'll say this is nonsense. They don't believe in market research because they believe they will develop a product that the clients will buy, right? They don't do this. But the point is, for the other 99% of companies in the world operate in this way. You need to have some idea, is there demand for your product, right? So the point is, if the answer here is no, well, that means let's stop here. Let's not continue. Okay, so as we go along, so we get to point 3, which is prototype physical. This is where we really go and build it now. And something we've just started introducing with some recent projects is doing some testing. Doing rather product reliability testing, taking it through cycles, putting it through highly accelerated life testing, just to see how is this product going to perform in the market. Which, so far, for new products has been quite unusual. Generally, you find startup companies, they go to minimal viable product, they land an investor or a client, and boom, they put the product out there. I remember TomTom when it launched, massive failures, massive returns, but they were selling so many they didn't care. So that, it was just mountains of TomToms piling up in Europe because they didn't do this step. Well, not enough at least. And then obviously the other test, compliance. We're not a certified lab, so we will not be able to give a certificate. But what we will do is we will prepare the thing to be able to go for the necessary accreditation, whether it's electronics or mechanical or food or medical or whatever it might be. We will go through what we call pre-compliance to get it there. And then the red spot, I believe this is what the number of papers has been about the last few days, is this notion of tooling. Massive, massive hurdle for startup companies. And even for a corporate, for a corporate this means massive investment. How do you get from this prototype into small-scale manufacturing? As mentioned, a lot of people come in at this level. They've already done the prototype. And then they ask us, can we reproduce it? Well, in most cases, no. It's a prototype. We can't reproduce it. Unless it's very simple. We basically need to go back to design, redesign, re-prototype, and then we'll start preparing this thing for small-scale manufacturing. But tooling has been a major hurdle, and specifically in our industry. I don't know how it is in other countries. Well, I have a fair idea in Europe. Not so sure about US and Japan. In South Africa, this is a major hurdle for many companies because now the numbers become significant. For a startup company simply cannot afford to develop that tool. So, and what typically would happen is if you go to a contract manufacturer, the contract manufacturers will say, you know what, I'll do it for you. What I will do is I'll amortize the cost and I'll put it into the unit cost. But you can imagine from the contract manufacturer's perspective, the business behind that, the only way they can afford that is to say, well, minimum order quantity. Minimum order quantity is typically higher than what a startup company can afford, so they get stuck here. So we've introduced this as a service. We charge for that at reduced rates, and we're hoping, and I think there are a number of people in the audience that we would hope to collaborate more with in the future going forward to help us more in terms of being able to do this cheaper, faster, and so on. And we've had some successes in this case. And then obviously finally we go into this what we call small-scale manufacturing. Right? By small scale we really mean that. We mean 100 units. Or if it's a very simple product, 1,000 units. Because that's typically what a business needs to see if there's traction, to see if there's demand. So get 100 units out there and see what it takes. Early adopters. Possibly if it's a simple product, 1,000 units out there. Because once you hit that magical number of 100 or 1,000, depending on the complexity, if there's demand, and the guy comes back with a potential order, now he can basically take his tool and go to a contract manufacturer and have it manufactured. Or if you can raise the capital, set up a small workshop or a factory, to make the next 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is. Because typically you'll find in most businesses, in the electronics business that I've operated in for many years, it's these multiples of 10. 10 to 100,000 is kind of like a test, to see if someone likes the product. If 100,000 goes into the market and you sell those in 3 months, if that happens, then you jump. You go from like million, 10 million, 100 million. If you're in the Apple space, Apple or Samsung space, 100 million units per year. That's the kind of scale these guys are operating at. So when you're still in the 10,000 kind of unit, you're still playing. You're not serious. You're still in the playground. In electronic devices, if you get serious, in South African market, 1 million would be significant. In the worldwide market, 1 million is still playing. You're still in the sandpit. In the worldwide market, you're talking about 10 million units up to 100 million units. But for South African purposes, the 1 million units is fine. If you've made 1 million units of, relatively high value item, then you should be okay. Okay, and then us having been a very technical company, we technicians and engineers tend to forget about, okay, so we've made this product and we call the customer and say, please come and pick up your product. Well, we look at it and say, okay, that's nice. And by the way, in the business to business, that works. That's no problem. But if you develop this for an inventor, consumer kind of person, the thing needs packaging, and that in itself is its own science, just to develop the right packaging. So what we see in the bottom here is what we've been ignoring so far, for the simple reason we've always left this up to our partners, and we still do, by the way. What we are looking at is to say, we integrate this into our model, to say, when you feed prototype, let's just make very sure, so we've done the market research is suggesting continue, but let's just do a double sanity check here. When we come to prototype, let's just do now what we would call a business plan, business model, canvas, all of those things. Just do a sanity check, is it really what we thought it was? Because now, we're spending some significant money, and as we go to manufacturing, obviously at this point, when the product is ready, then obviously comes the marketing. And this is why I'm saying, by the time you reach this point, you're only less than halfway through launching a business. And therefore, I generally suggest to people, unless they really want products developed, if you want to do business, start with buy and sell. Just trade. Just get into how do I buy something, finished good, and trade it online or through eBay or whatever it might be. Because then you've kind of mastered this thing, and by the time you have your product ready, then you just launch that into the new channel. And then obviously that would be less work. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in slightly into 1, 2, and 3. So I mentioned this fact of, in the space where we're playing, in the technology space, if you look at IoT, typical development cycles are 3 to 7 years. I mean, think of automotive. I'm not even speaking about a new car. I'm talking about going generation to next generation car. Typically it's about 5 years on average. I mean, yeah, guys doing it better. But on average, automotive industry about 5 years, right? So you're somewhere in that kind of 3 to 7 years. So we've developed this fast track program, so where we commit to the client to say less than 3 years. And that also means we need to be very strict in ourselves. If we look at the thing and we look at the technology readiness level and we say science doesn't support it, technology doesn't support it, we don't see enough components out of technology readiness level 9 or 8, can't do it. Maybe in the future, so we look at our watch and we say please come back in 2 years. Because by then the technology might have developed. I'll give you a nice example, battery technology at the moment. New battery technologies are about 5 years away. People are developing, there are some products on the market, but they are very early. So I would argue we are probably with batteries now where we were with personal computer, when did it launch? 81, I think, it was about 35 years ago. We are probably at batteries now and some of the renewable energies where we were 35 years ago with PC. So if this was 35 years ago, we would not develop a PC for a client. Because at that stage, it would still take more than 3 years, and this is where we're batteries. And we have a lot of guys approaching us, please can you develop us a new battery technology, please can you develop us a new fuel cell? And we say, no, it's too far away for us. So come back in 2 years, because then the technology would have evolved a lot, and then maybe we could fit it into the 3-year schedule. Okay, so step here one, this notion that we spoke about, idea to napkin sketch. For many people that idea just is in their head, they can't even get it down on a napkin. That's difficult. They can explain it in words, but to get that into a sketch is quite a challenge, but that's generally what we're talking about. Generally inventors, and we like to make the split between inventors and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are not necessarily inventors. They might just have a business idea. So it's not necessarily a product or technology that they have in mind, they just have this business idea. And they're a different bunch of people that are definitely separate to the inventors, so we make that split. So inventors coming to us perhaps having a clearer idea, and they have an idea about what the product can do, but they don't necessarily think the thing through to think what the application might be, or is there any demand for that. We collaborate a lot with business incubators, because when we set out, we said we're not going to do the business model support, we're not going to do the market research, and we're definitely not going to do the marketing. We're partners. We like to partner, we like to collaborate. So we leave this up to the business incubators to do the business plan, financing, and marketing. And what we see in South Africa, in our scenario, is business incubators generally don't have the capability of doing the product development. So they can help the entrepreneurs, but they can't help inventors. So if the entrepreneur happens to have a product, they refer them to us. And I'm talking now public incubators, private sector incubators, so we tend to work very closely with them. Not on a national scale, the places that are too far away, our focus is very much, I call it north of the Orange River, basically. Beyond the Orange River, a bit far for us, so we don't necessarily focus on it. So I would say the northern half of the country is basically where we're focusing on. Okay, then this notion of prototype. Again, if I speak to engineers, they have this, just their process within prototyping is this 10-step process, and I say to them, we confuse clients. I can't sell that to a client. So we've tried to break it down into 4 steps to say this is something I can sell. So the first notion, mock-up. Often 3D printed, could be built, hand-built, quick composites or putting something together, clay model or wood or, just using composite materials to put it together. But the notion here, what's very important for product development in terms of not so much the product, but more towards the investors and potential clients, is the notion of having this realistic, tangible view. You can touch and feel it. You can turn it around. I just saw here in the technology station just behind some very nice samples of things that have been printed. I mean, if you can see it, you can almost sell it just on the basis of what you can see. I saw some very impressive things that were 3D printed there, which, it's nice to sell. Then we take it into concept, what we call minimum viable product, to show potential client investors. So this might already hook an investor, but generally you need to bring this thing where this is now what we call working prototype. So if this was a mechanical thing, this is where the gears are now turning. In the first one, we just printed it literally, that takes the shape. In the second one, now the gears are moving. Electronics are doing probes and making signals and lights and all sorts of things. Then what we do is when we go to what we call the product level, or what we call final prototypes, reproduce limited quantities. So this is where we're now going to. Typically on the electronic side, we've done a number. Often clients ask us, and I'm talking corporates, not necessarily startups, build me 4. Okay, so, or build me 1, so we build 1. Prove the concept, yes, works. Okay, build me 4, right, 4. 4 goes out into field testing. Client comes back and said, okay, now build me 20. Okay, so now we go and build 20. So based on that feedback they're getting in the field, they then say, okay, I would like to add these features, and this is what we then take to final product. Once this is ready, now we start preparing. I mean, obviously through these steps we already took into account, remember at some point we're no longer going to 3D print this. This thing is going to go into an injection mold, or it's going to pick and place machine to do the electronics. So people are not going to do things by hand anymore, you know, but now these things are going into CNC machines. So we took that into account all the way through the steps. But this is now basically we're at the pre-production level. And sadly enough, money is generally the thing that stops us, you know, where the guy, we've reached the point, but they can't go to the next step. And this is really what we believe to be the major hurdle, and that's the next step. This notion of prototype to first production unit. So this is, as I said, where we now have to start changing the CAD, you know, to CAM. So major battles I always see here between the engineers and the tool and die makers. You know, the tool and die makers think the engineers didn't go, you know, they don't have any knowledge. And the engineers think the tool and die makers are, you know, not so bright. So massive communication issues here. But the point is, this is where we're now getting this thing into where we're not building it by hand anymore. Because this thing now needs to be loaded as an image onto a machine, and the machine is going to do the machining, whatever it is it does. Whether it's a milling machine or a lathe or whatever it might be. In many cases, because we're in the IoT space, if it was a little electronic device, some probe or something, it needs a casing. Now if it needs a casing, that generally is some polymer, which means injection molding, which means we could have 3D printed the initial ones, but at some point it needs to go to injection molding, so this is quite key for us. And here's where I mentioned, for one of the first projects we brought all the way through, the guy when he arrived at us the first time came with a prototype, plonk, on the table. Please can you reproduce? Well, our mechanicals guys looked at it and they said, well, maybe, but not in this lifetime. So, redesign, reprototype. So we've brought this guy through, and we're now at the point of just finalizing the last molds, going into injection molding. But what was quite interesting about this thing, and that's what I said, what was quite unusual for new products. Now, if it's a corporate client, you can imagine they understand. In product development, you have to do it. You have to have some anticipation of what is my mean time between failure going to be in the field. You know, what can I expect back? What should I put in my, for the technical people, I'm now going finance, on my balance sheet, what should I put there as a reserve as to how many units I'm going to get back? So for startup companies, it's unusual, but we like to offer this to them because this would reduce their cost initially. And then obviously, you know, we collaborate quite a bit with prototyping companies who might not have the equipment or engineering schools that we have in order to take it to production. Because we've identified this step as a major gap in South Africa. And we know there are some players. I mean, obviously, you know, we've identified the guys in the space, and we are already collaborating with some of them. And you know, if we recognize a partner who can do it better than we can, then we latch onto it. You know, we speak to them and say, please, can we send you some stuff to make for us? And that's really where we are. Just from a financial perspective, and I know the purpose, I just wanted to get you through the notion of where these guys are in terms of the funding. So initially it starts out with friends and family. So this is what we call the ideation phase. At some point they need more money. So here's where you start doing that product development. You can see the risk is extremely high here, and there's no value. You know, no investor will get in at this stage. And that's why that's friends and family. At some point you'll get an angel investor who might say, like the idea, right? So this is where the startup is still battling to get this product need fit. In other words, is there really demand for what I'm doing? What becomes quite important for the inventor then is to say product customer fit. Is there sufficient demand for me to now go into production? Should I produce that first 1,000 units? And basically once we see, you know, when we go into validation, this is around A and B funding. This is, in the US, if you start seed funding, this is about $1 million. In South Africa, this would be about 100,000 Rand. So that's about less than $10,000. If you go into Series A funding in the US, that will be about $3 million. In South Africa, this is about 250,000 Rand. You know, 250 to 500,000 Rand. Many of you that are working with the Technology Innovation Agency, we are developing prototypes for clients. That will typically, that is actually seed funding where TIA would then give someone about 500,000 Rand to develop to get to this level. And this is where we see a lot of guys falling off. So at some point there's product customer fit. As soon as that product hits market and is ready, this is basically when we're out. But it's just to say from the client's perspective for whom we've developed the product now, when we step out, this is when his real problems start. So meaning he has to go and develop that business. But at some point, when he hits his business, then basically he's reduced the risk, the value goes up, and this is basically a successful company. I think that was basically it. That was the story. Thank you.